My name's Ethan, but most folks on the radio used to call me Red. I'm 46, Nebraska-born, 22 years, hauling everything from palletized paper to frozen beef. The only reason I tell you any of that is because it explains why I stopped that night. Out here we've got a code. If you see triangles on the shoulder, you check. Somebody helped you once. You pass it on. That rule raised me on the road. It kept me decent. It kept me human, until the night it didn't. It was a Sunday, rolling into Monday, March 3rd, 2013. I'd cleared Ogallala and the Colorado line with 42,000 pounds of paper and a delivery window tight enough to make a dispatcher smile. The sky was the color of spill-black coffee, the kind that coats your tongue and turns to cold before you remember to drink it. Around 2:30 a.m., I'd slipped into that steady, high-beam trance on I-76, where you're not quite thinking and not quite asleep. You're just a moving part inside a bigger machine. The prairie out there is so flat the wind feels like it can push your truck straight off the map. I had the fan on low, seat heater clicking, a hairline crack marching across my passenger mirror from a rock that tagged me near Lexington. Nothing else was wrong. That's important to say. Nothing else was wrong. I saw the triangles at 2:41 a.m., 3 of them, perfect dot spacing, glowing orange in the retro-reflective flash of my highs. They were so neat they almost looked staged for a photo in a training manual. First thought, poor bastard did it by the book. Second thought, where the hell is his rig? My foot eased and the rig hummed down onto the rumble strip. I keyed up channel 19. Breakdown at 214 westbound. Anybody claim those triangles? Static hushed in my speaker, and then the faraway gossip of 2 drivers jawing about weather 100 miles off. Nobody answered me. I don't know if I wanted them to. I coasted to a crawl, hazard lights ticking, and rolled up until the first triangle floated in my hood light. Nothing around it but frozen dirt and bleached grass. No skid, no radiator steam plume, no oil smear rainbowing in my beams. Just those 3 little red mouths on metal feet, opened wide like they were warning me and too polite to shout. I should have rolled. I know that now. But that code, my code, had me by the hand. 2 minutes, I told myself. Make sure he's not down in the ditch. I grabbed my flashlight, let the door swing, and stepped down. Cold air knifed through my jacket and woke up nerves I had forgotten I owned. The wind was throwing grit, and I could taste it in my teeth. I angled my flashlight to reset the nearest triangle. The wind had nudged it a foot sideways, and that's when I saw the prints. Boots. 2 sets. Mine were fresh and clumsy, cutting into the frost like stamps. The older ones tracked around the triangles and crossed themselves, then went off toward the cattle fence. One tread was heavy and even. The other dragged at the ball, like the wearer was lazy with one foot or that foot had something to say in every step. Drag, press, drag, press. It put a question in my blood that I didn't like the shape of. I turned toward the cab. In the passenger mirror, the cracked one, I caught a flicker, not a shadow, a shape, a sleeve, and the suggestion of a high-vis stripe moving where nobody should be. At the same instant, I saw the dash cam's faint red LED mounted center windshield wink off. In the corner of my eye, I watched the wire I'd left looping down to the 12-volt socket go slack like a snake deflated. Someone had reached in through my open door and pulled the plug. I hadn't heard them. The engine and the wind were a blanket. I started back up the step, not fast enough. A hand slid onto my shoulder like it belonged there. Not a grab, a placement, a thumb finding the notch under my collarbone and pressing as if to test how much of me was solid. Quiet, a voice said behind me. Calm, the way a man talks when he has practiced sounding calm. It wasn't a threat so much as a setting, like he was telling me we'd be driving with the window up now. There were 2 of them between me and my seat. Vests, beanies pulled down, cheap gloves. The tall one had wide farmer shoulders and a face built by weather. A knife sat in his hand like a thing that belonged there too. The shorter one stood half a step back and to the side, his right foot turned out, the toe of his boot worn to rubber. He breathed oddly, a wet little whistle tucked on the end of every exhale, like his nose never healed right. I remember these things because my brain decided it would be useful to inventory the men who were about to erase me. I said something stupid like, "Hey, what is this?" because normal words feel like a rope you can throw over an avalanche. The tall man angled the knife and fixed the rope to my throat. "Don't," he said. That was all. Not, "Don't scream." Not, "Don't run." Not, "Don't be a hero." Just don't, because he didn't want to say more and have to keep that promise. They turned me by the elbows, steered me off the shoulder, and walked me down into the ditch like I was an old dog they were helping to the yard. The short one moved with a rhythm that made me want to match it, as if keeping time would keep me alive. Drag, press, drag, press. The cattle fence bent its lower wires easy and scraped my coat buttons. Out on the interstate, a reefer roared by. Its wind punched my back, and then we were in the lee of some cottonwoods where the prairie coughs up a two-track, the kind of path men make by driving to the same place too many times. I'd like to tell you I fought. I thought about how close I was to the door, about turning and burying my shoulder in the knife guy, about taking a hard cut and sprinting up the step. People love those stories. What I did was look at the knife and look at the short one's eyes. Brown, tired, and not present, and decide not to get cut for pride. It's hard to admit that. The first real thing I felt that night was shame. The second was the tape. They carried it in the pocket of the vest. Silver ducked, the cheap kind that tears crooked. The short one fished for my wrists, and I pulled away out of reflex. The tall man's hand landed at the base of my skull and found a nerve I have learned twice since in physical therapy. My legs folded without consulting me. The short one took my wrists gently, like we were dancing. He wrapped the tape around them and made a little grunt of satisfaction when the rip sounded. The tall man's breath smelled like coffee left too long on a burner. He said, "Step," and we stepped. The corrugated panel in the cottonwoods was the color of everything that gets left on the plains. Not quite gray, not quite brown, a practical silence. They levered one edge up with a rusted fence post and showed me the dark under it like a magician, revealing a trap door he expects me to enjoy. "It's not far," the short one said. His voice was younger than his face. "We'll figure it out in the morning. You'll be fine." He believed it in the way people believe the worst part is definitely not the part they are doing. I went down a wooden ladder whose rungs were spongy and cold. The hole smelled like wet rope and potatoes, the kind that go sweet and then go away. The tall man followed just far enough to cut a strip and loop it around my ankles. He tugged once, not cruel, to see if I understood. He climbed and the panel came back. It wasn't heavy enough to be a lid. It was heavy enough to teach you that light is a luxury, not a right. In movies, the next thing that happens is yelling. I did some. The dirt swallowed it. My ears filled with my own blood because my heart was making little fists and throwing them. After a while, the yelling turned to offers. Money, truck, passwords I pretended I had, and then the offers turned to prayers. I don't use prayers much. I was bad at them. Mine were bargains without terms. Let this not be how I end, and I will do things I haven't done and turn off the radio sometimes and call my sister back when she asks for pictures of the kids. I made promises nobody heard and then hated myself for having waited for a hole to make them. Time is a trick in a hole. My watch was still up in the cab, and the cold does not advance like it does in air. It attaches one knuckle at a time. I pressed my forearms under my ribs and worked my mouth against the tape because tasting glue is better than tasting dirt. I tried to keep track by counting my breaths in hundreds. Somewhere past 600, I heard them above me, voices filtered by wood and dirt into something like a CB squelch. If you've been married, you know voices even when the words are wrong. They had the argument of brothers. "We can't keep him here," the short one said. "Not another one." "It isn't what we said." "What we said was not getting caught," the tall one said. His calm from before had been a pose. He sounded tired like a radiator sounds when it runs dry. "You want to drag him to the road and wave?" "I'm not the one who left the triangles in a straight line, Colt. I left them like the book so they'd look right." "That's exactly the problem." Colt. There it was. A name fits a man into the world even when the world makes no room for him. I pressed my cheek to the cold wall and filed it away the way truckers file away a good diner exit. If I made it out, I wanted something to give the people who would come after them. They moved around up there and the dirt shook down in patient little drifts. I could hear a vehicle door, the slam, then the quick scrape of a cigarette lighter. Someone swore at the wind. The tall one said, "Morning," and he's gone. "No more nights." The short one said, "One more night," like a correction without a fight left in it. Then their voices muffled to nothing again and the ladder creaked once on the way out. This is the part people say dragged in the telling. I don't know how to make the cold and the dark interesting for you. I can tell you specifics. My wrists swelled and the tape cut hair by hair where it crossed my skin. I could smell mice and old onion. I could hear my own truck on the shoulder when another rig went by, the settling twang in the frame rails, the tick-tick-tick of a hot pipe remembering heat. I ran a hand under my jacket and felt the ridge of a scar from when I was 24, and a box knife taught me a lesson. I decided I would prefer that kind of hurt to this kind. I thought about my wife in Lincoln and what I had told her last time we spoke. I'll be late, but I'll call when I park. I thought about how she would listen to a phone that did not ring. A thing happened down in me. It comes to you slow enough that you pretend you saw it coming. The code I'd believed in, the triangles, the stopping, did not fold or break. It bent sideways until it became something else. I had always been proud that I wasn't one of those hard-nosed drivers who blazed by people because the clock was a god. I liked being the man who could say I helped. In the cellar, I looked at that part of myself, and I couldn't find a way to feel good about it without lying. I had taken a rule meant to keep us human and handed it to men who had learned to turn it into bait. The shame came back, the first real thing. It sat with me like a patient dog, head on my knee. I didn't push it away. I made room. At some point, tired of myself and the dark, I slept in the way you do when you know your body can do it without you. When I woke, the light in the cellar had changed. It had a direction now. It wasn't much, but I could see the boards on the ceiling and the splinters where nails had been pulled 20 years ago. I heard another engine, different from theirs, the rev and fall of a Crown Vic or a Tahoe, and voices that weren't practiced at being calm. The first sound was boots where boots hadn't been. Then a voice above me said, "Here." I made a noise, and I can tell you I didn't recognize it as mine. The panel scraped and leaned, and cold air poured into the hole, as if it had been waiting to try on my skin. The man who leaned in had the sun behind him and the kind of mustache I had been teased for wanting in high school. He said, "You're all right," which is what you say when you don't know if it's true. He cut the tape like he was cutting bandage, and I cried because the blood going back to my hands felt like a hurt invented by a god that had been bored. They got me warm in the back of a cruiser and put a blanket over my lap and asked me questions in a careful order. Name, company, last contact, what did they look like, which way did they go? I asked after my truck, because trucks are dumb animals you love without admitting it. One of the deputies smiled in a way that apologized for the world. "Idle on the shoulder," he said. "Door open. Wallet where you left it." "How?" I started, and he said, "Dispatch flagged you when you missed your check. Your guys are good. Trooper found your prints and theirs by the triangles. We saw the fence. After that, it's our job to follow where men go when they don't want to be seen. They found the Suburban that night in a tin shed half a mile across plowed ground. Inside was a plastic tub with 6 triangles, 2 still in shrink wrap, a bundle of dollar store nitrile gloves, a folded map with circles on the frontage roads, a dash plug power cord that fit my cam brand too neatly to be coincidence, and a pair of boots with the right toe shaved down to rubber and cloth. The names came fast from a neighbor who had been waiting to say them. Lee and Colt Varner. One had once worked irrigation, one had once tried rodeo and left with a knee that had weather in it. The ranch they grew on had been bled of cows and pried one auction at a time. They were small-time mean, not smart enough to be careful, but smart enough to use what men trusted. When they showed me pictures later, I knew them without wanting to. The tall one's shoulders still made sense. Colt's right foot still wanted its say. "They go for nights because nights are quiet," the investigator said. "They like your code because your code brings you to them." On the tape of his first interview, Lee said, "We never wanted to hurt anybody. Just take some cash." He said it like he had ordered the world that way, and it had simply refused his change. Colt was quieter. He kept saying, "We did the triangles right." He believed in the neatness even as it damned him. They pled out, 15 and 10. It satisfies some people to hear the numbers. It didn't do much for me. The first night home, I woke up at 2:00-something, stood in the dark kitchen and stared at the dish rack like it was an animal that might bite me. My wife put a hand on my back and I jumped because a hand on my back meant a man with a knife in my memory and not a woman with coffee breath who keeps my name intact. I drove 2 weeks later because bills do what bills do. The first time I saw triangles again, they were exactly what they were supposed to be. A man with a flat, his triangles a little sloppy, his hazard triangles saying please and thank you in the language of the road. I didn't stop. I rolled past and felt that dog of shame hop back into the seat beside me. I argued with it. "You want me dead or you want me smart?" I said. The dog did not pick. I did one thing right with the hurt. I told it out loud. I talked to the safety guy at my company, the kind of man who lives for forms and waits his whole career for a real story. He listened without fixing his face. Then he put together a protocol change sheet with my name on it and my words in it and sent it to everybody. Unattended triangles, the sheet said, are not proof of life. It said, assist from your cab. Light the scene. Call 277 and dispatch. Do not exit until you can visually confirm the disabled vehicle, and the person drivers grumbled because changing a code feels like killing a pet. But some of them called me after and said, I had a bad feeling last night and I used your rule, and whichever way it would have gone, it didn't. People ask me if I forgive them, Lee and Colt. I don't have the kind of heart that does forgiveness like a magic trick. I have the kind that forgets in pieces. What I do have is a memory of their voices above the whole. The argument that sounded like the argument I had with myself when I saw those triangles. Do the thing you're proud of, or do the thing that keeps you alive. I can't tell you which one is right because right moved on me that night and hasn't stopped moving since. I can tell you that if you're running west on I-76 in the loneliest hour and you see 3 little red mouths calling you over, you should listen to them with your eyes first. The road will try to make you a good man and a dead one at the same time if you let it. I still answer to red sometimes on 19, though I keep it short and keep my window up when I say it. I still believe in helping. I just believe in living more. I carry an extra set of triangles and a toe strap and a thermos. I'm not ashamed to share. I also carry a spotlight that will bleach a lie. When I pass mile 214, I click it on and paint the shoulder white. If there's a man, I'll see him. If there isn't, the light is for me. A reminder that darkness is a tool some men learn, and a trucker's code is only as good as the men who meet you under it. I'm Ethan. I'm alive. And if you ever hear me on the radio saying there's triangles on the shoulder and I'm stopping, you have my permission to tell me. Easy now, Red. Help smart, not brave. My name's Shannon Pike, 41, Oklahoma born and raised. Been pulling dry van and reefer since I flunked out of community college and realized I liked the night better than I liked classrooms. My old man ran grain back roads and taught me 3 simple things. Keep your brakes dry, your log clean, and your eyes open at way stations, because even when you've got nothing to hide, a clipboard can ruin your day. I believed him. I also believed the uniforms. That second part is what almost got me killed on US 54 in western Kansas. It was late October 2016, harvest dust hanging in the air like brown fog, the kind that sticks to your tongue. I was eastbound with a half-light load of produce out of Deming, New Mexico, headed toward Wichita, where it had bounced north on a relay. Weather, dry, cold, a hard moon riding low. I'd left Liberal after midnight, coffee in a thermos I stole from myself years ago, radio low to keep the cab from turning into a box of thoughts. If you've driven that run, you know the rhythm. Long, dark farm turnoffs, the occasional pump jack nodding in silhouette, and every so often a portable weigh setup the state pops open for seasonal checks. They come and go. Open 1 week, closed the next, like a bait shop. I saw the weigh station at a distance first. Cones, portable pads laid like silver tongues across the shoulder, a prefab booth with a little porch light. The big roadside sign that's usually slatted to read closed was flipped to open, backlit in a clean white that looked almost too new. A man in a tan uniform shirt and high-vis vest stepped out and raised his palm the way all inspectors do, a slow, steady wave downward that tells you to ease up and behave yourself. I glanced at my gauges out of habit. Temps good, brakes good, weight good, log legal. Fine, I thought, get weighed, checked, and gone. I keyed my CB and said, open pad at the portable off 54, mile marker 209. Watch your speed. One guy out there replied like a mosquito, copy, and then a weird fizz hit the speaker, the kind of static you get when someone keys a bad mic right next to your ear. I shook it off, no big deal. I dipped onto the shoulder, rolled my steer tires onto the first portable scale. Up close, little things went sideways in my head. The cones looked too clean, like they'd just come out of a shrink wrap. The battery beacons on them pulsed perfectly in sync. Usually those things drift after an hour and blink like drunks. The man's patch looked right at first glance, KHP, but it sat a fraction too low on the sleeve, and the stitching around the edges caught the light like cheap thread. He wore a clip-on badge. I don't think I ever really noticed a clip-on before that night. Now I see them in my sleep. He stepped to my window with a clipboard and a smile they must teach on day 3 of authoritative but friendly. I cracked the window 2 inches. "Evening, driver," he said. "Routine safety. We're running light checks and brake looks. Nothing to be nervous about." I wasn't nervous until he told me not to be. He tilted the clipboard up for my DOT and bill of lading. I passed them through the crack. He didn't even glance, just handed them back. "Good, good," he said too quickly. "Pop your brakes. We'll do a walk around together." My cell signal dropped to no service. Not 1 bar. I'm not saying that's impossible out there, but I'd had 3 bars a mile back using the same tower I always use. The CB fizzed again with that keyed mic noise, then went dead quiet in a way that isn't quiet at all. It's a sucked-out silence that makes your scalp prickle. I felt the hairs on my arm stand up inside my jacket. I don't mind admitting fear feels a lot like static. It builds in layers until you hear it over your own engine. He motioned to the trailer. "Let's grab the brake chamber measurements," he said. "Just a sec." He used the exact words a real inspector would. That's what bothered me. The script fit, but not the timing. Real DOT guys. Always start with paperwork, then lights, then brakes. They take the slow route so you hang yourself if you're gonna. This man wanted me out of the cab as the opening move. I set my parking brake but left the transmission in low. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped down onto the portable pad. Cold tore through my jeans. The booth behind him looked wrong inside. No printer, no state pamphlets, no coats on hooks, no radio chassis with their little red hearts beating. A table, a plastic water jug, a large hard case the size of a toolbox. The case was smooth black and had foam ridges like something technical lived inside. We walked the driver's side. His clipboard hovered near my face once or twice, and the hard black edge smelled faintly like spray paint. He bent to look at a brake hose and somehow kept his eyes on me while his head was turned away, and I thought, "You're a hunter pretending to look at tracks." He tapped a cone with his boot as we passed, and I heard the tiniest clack you'd expect from hollow plastic, but also a tick you only get from electronics. Waking up. "Lights," he said. "Left signal. Right." Hazards. I climbed in, thumbed the stalks, watched the reflections play on the back of his vest. The hazards glowed steady. That part calmed me. I tapped brakes. Air pressure looked stable. I killed the engine and let the truck settle because he asked me to. My hand hovered on the key a second longer than normal. "Appreciate it," he said, back at my window. "One more quick thing. We've got a sharp turn down there where trucks drag dirt onto the blacktop. We're doing mud flap checks to keep KDOT off our backs. I'll need you to pull around to the cones by the booth. I'll signal." A mud flap check? At 2:30 in the morning on a portable pad? That's a real thing, sure. It's just never the thing. He put his palm up to stay and walked to the console of blinking beacons and tapped something I couldn't see. I reached for my phone to text dispatch a little, ran into a check note and found no service still. My CB meter showed carrier, but no audio. It looked like a line was open and eating the air. I keyed it anyway, said, "Break 19. Anyone catching my check?" No one replied. The meter fluttered and then pinned, like someone was jamming near me. The man spun his hand to wave me forward. I let the truck roll. He guided me past the booth until my cab lined up with the hard case inside, like he'd parked me against a curb that wasn't there. He raised both hands a little too high like a crossing guard teaching a kid. I set the brake and watched him in my mirror. He placed his clipboard on the booth rail, and his fingers lingered against its underside. A weight slid down my spine, a big cold penny settling into my gut. I rolled the glass down another 2 inches and said, "What county officer did you say you were borrowed from tonight?" He didn't blink. Meade County. It was the right answer for that stretch, but it came too fast, like he'd kept it in his cheek. "What's the shift sergeant's name?" I asked, and then I smiled like I was making conversation. On nights like this, small talk can be a crowbar. He smiled back, and I watched the smile stop everywhere, except his mouth. "You boys always this curious?" he said. "Only when I'm awake." He lifted the clipboard again, and for a second I could see under the silver clip. The form had no state letterhead. It had boxes, sure, but the kind you print off Word in a hurry and call official because you used Arial. He caught me looking and rotated it out of view. "Hop down," he said, gesturing toward the rear of the trailer, "and I'll show you what I'm seeing on that left flap." I didn't hop. I said, "You got a name, officer?" He took 1/2 step, too close to my door now, and I saw the badge catch and tilt on its clip. He put his palm on my door like he meant to be steady, but really he meant to own it. "You're being non-compliant, driver," he said, with just enough volume to make it a scene if anyone had been around to watch. No one was. My finger found the horn. I leaned on it. The sound tore across the portable like a train in a church and swallowed itself in the same minute, and it hit me how empty the highway was, how they'd set up where the line of sight bent away from everything. He didn't flinch. Men flinch by reflex when horns erupt inches from their ear. He didn't. He stood there with the kind of stillness you get only by knowing what's coming next. He said, "Key down and step out." And I should have. Instead, I did what a paranoid cousin taught me once. I dropped the window all the way, extended my left hand slowly like I was handing him something, and then with my right, I threw the door wide into him and slammed the same motion back to lock it. The door caught his wrist. He yelped and stumbled. I grabbed my gear selector, jammed to low, and rolled forward off the pad while he staggered out of the arc. He recovered fast. He sprinted along the step and grabbed my mirror with his wounded hand, the clip-on badge bouncing against the glass, the two little magnets at the corners winking. He reached for my door handle again. I jinked the wheel toward the line of cones. Not enough to hit him, just enough to make him choose. He let go and kicked a cone hard enough to knock it over. It fell and belched a little square box out of its hollow, black, with a stubby antenna. I saw the jammer when it hit the asphalt. The CB came alive the instant the box scraped away from the truck. Driver, that you laying on your horn?" A voice punched in, loud enough to rattle the dash screws. I smashed my palm onto the mic. "Portable at 209 is not law enforcement," I said, and I heard my voice come out half a pitch higher than I keep it. "Repeat, not law. Tan shirt, clip on. I'm rolling. Anyone near, light him up." The man ran for the booth. He yanked open the hard case and pulled out something that looked like a baton, telescoping, with a slotted mouth at one end. I'd seen animal control use those in town on a stray pit bull once. You don't forget the look. I put my foot down. The truck surged. My trailer bumped the edge of a pad and clanged like a tin roof in hail. Two sets of headlights crested the mild rise a quarter-mile back. Trucks, not police, but trucks or church when you need witnesses. I wasn't sure if they'd heard me or if it was just fate, but their presence changed the math. The man threw the baton into the case and used both hands to shut it. He moved inside the booth and bent, and the open sign at the highway went dark, then came back up as closed. The perfectly synchronized beacons drifted out of sync like whatever heartbeat held them together got tired. I didn't stop. I took the shoulder back to the lane and aired up to 60 in about as much road as it takes a prayer to leave your mouth. My hands went slick on the wheel. I've run with bad brakes in the mountains and lived. I've driven through a panhandle whiteout and slept afterward. This night put a weight in my chest I couldn't park. Behind me, the two trucks, one Bullnose Pete, one Freightliner, rolled past the portable in the opposite lane, both laid on their air in long, angry notes that would have peeled paint if there had been any on that prefab. In my mirror, I watched the man in his tan shirt freeze, as if a camera had asked him to be someone else for one frame. He recovered and walked back into whatever script he'd memorized. A mile out, the phone bars came back like nothing had happened. I thumbed 911, still rolling, and told the operator what I had. Description, mile marker, the knocked-over cone, and the little black box that fell out. The clip-on badge, the Word document masquerading as a form. I told her the sign had flipped and the radios had gone strange, and that he'd tried to pull me out on the first ask, not after cause. She sounded very awake and very bored at once and told me to pull into the Valero at Mineola and wait for KHP. I said I'd do it. I didn't say I'd be shaking when I got there. The troopers showed in about 11 minutes. Fast for out here. 2 units, real uniforms, real threaded badges, the lower edge stitched into the cloth the way it's supposed to be. They took me through it twice, then drove back toward the portable. Another unit rolled past to sit a mile east and to act like a net. I sat on my bumper and tried to pry my fingers off the memory of the baton and the way the open had turned to closed like a curtain. A kid in a ball cap with the Valero logo asked if I wanted coffee. I said yes and no in the same sentence, and he brought it anyway. When KHP returned, they had the cone and the box in the trunk with a yellow bag around them, like evidence in a show. They found the hard case in the prefab with light bars, whistles, a fake KHP patch, and a printed list of common DOT inspection phrases. They found a second box wired to a battery pack under the porch that would have kept a cell jammer and a CB carrier up for hours if you cared to be alone for that long. They found the open/closed sign wired to a remote switch on the booth console, the one he'd tapped when he wanted to turn invisible. The man was gone. The booth had a back door I hadn't noticed, and there's a grid of farm roads out there that can swallow a Ford in 3 turns if you know the fences. What they did get, one of the troopers told me the next day on the phone, was a make and partial plate off a white SUV a rancher had noticed loitering near the Meade turnoff earlier that night. 2 days later, troopers in Seward County stopped a white Ford Explorer pulling off on the shoulder to let its driver throw something into a ditch. They recovered a clip-on badge, a tan uniform shirt, and a handful of fake patches. The driver's name was Leland Gaines, 37, former security guard with a sensitivity to the word no. His apartment in Hugoton held enough police memorabilia to open a museum and enough electronics to worry one. In his trunk, a second hard case with an identical catch pole to the one I'd seen, plus a reckless collection of zip ties and sedative vials that made the trooper on the phone go slow on his nouns. They said he'd been applying to police departments for years and failing the psych screens. They said he liked to listen, scanners, CB, weather, anything that told him where people were and where people weren't. They didn't say I wasn't the first, but the way they didn't say it told me I wasn't. There's a version of the story where I am cool. In that one, I clock the patch, spot the jammer, and drive away without the part where a door catches a man's wrist and the horn comes out of me like panic pretending to be a plan. I don't own that version. I own this one. I believed a sign because it glowed the right word. I trusted a shirt because it was the right color. I handed a stranger the authority to move me, and I only took it back when the glass was already coming down. I changed after that. I don't care to brag about it. At portable setups, I stop with my driver's window high and my phone camera rolling pointed at the mirror. I ask for credentials I never used to ask for. I look for printers, radios, pamphlets, coats, the cheap human clutter of a real station. I key the CB and call for a copy from anyone within 2 miles. If my bars die at the line and the carrier pins my meter without a voice, I put it in gear and leave. If I get a ticket for that, I'll frame it and I'll sleep. A few months later, my company pushed a policy with my name on the bottom, Portable Way Station Verification Protocol. It reads like this. You may refuse to exit the cab until credentials are presented through the glass and verified with dispatch. If cell and CB both fail at the point of contact, treat as suspicious and move to a lit public lot within 1 mile, then call 911. Never park with your door open or your dash cam unplugged on an inspector's ask. Look for printer, radio, state materials. Absence is an escalation. If asked for a non-standard check first, mud flaps at 2 a.m. for instance. Question and document. Drivers grumbled. The good ones still do. Some of them called me just to growl that I was making a pain where there didn't need to be one. More called me to say a portable on US 400 looked wrong, and they kept rolling. And later, they heard sirens go that direction, and they felt like they dodged a thing you can't name without giving it more life than it deserves. I still get nervous when I see those big open letters glowing on the shoulder. I still stop when it's right, because running from the people who keep the roads safe isn't safety. But I treat the sign now like I treat headlights in my mirror. They're information, not truth. The truth is in the stitching on a patch, the sloppy beacon blink, the clutter on a desk, the way a man doesn't flinch when a horn explodes inches from his head because he's done this enough times to forget to act human. I'm Shannon, out of Enid. The night still suits me, and I'm telling you this because I wanted to be the guy who respects uniforms, and I still am. I've just learned to respect the details more. If you catch me on 19 saying there's a portable ahead and it looks too clean, you'll hear me add a new line I wish I never needed. Verify before you obey. And if you ever find yourself easing onto a pad at 2:30 in the morning and the man with the clipboard wants you out of the cab before he wants your name, remember me and keep your window high. There are plenty of people out here trying to help you. There's at least one who wants you alone. My name's Victor Reese, 39, based out of Billings. I run mountain and high plains routes because I like the quiet and because I grew up with snow in my boots. I'm not reckless. I'm the guy who chains early, drinks coffee slow, and waves plows through like they're royalty. I say that because it explains why I pulled over when the lights hit. Red and blue in a white world mean you stop. You trust the badge. That reflex nearly ended me on Highway 201 January night when the storm turned the whole state into a blank page. It started as a regular winter run, industrial refrigeration crates out of Great Falls headed east toward Glendive for a yard transfer. I'd chosen 200 over the interstate because construction near Miles City had been a mess the week before, and Highway 200, for all its emptiness, usually moves if you respect it. The forecast said snow showers, Montana speak for deal with it. By 2:30 a.m., the showers had found each other and decided to be a storm, the kind that chews the world down to your hood ornament and then gnaws on that too. I had chains on both drives. Jake, break off. And I was feathering the throttle like it was a violin string. The CB on 19 was mostly quiet, occasional check-ins from ranch trucks moving salt or hay, a plow somewhere west, coughing out a location like a man apologizing for existing. My heater fought to keep the windshield from fogging where my breath hit the glass. Every now and then, a gust would slap the trailer and make the whole rig shiver the way a horse shivers its skin to shed flies. There's a rhythm to that kind of night. Watch the edge line, trust the markers, count the posts, and don't listen to any thought that arrives with big ideas. I saw the lights in my mirror first, red and blue, sharp even through the snow. If you've ever run a whiteout, you know how wrong bright color looks in it. It's like someone has poured paint into milk. The pattern pulsed true. 2 blink red, 2 blink blue, steady as a heartbeat. I eased off, blinkers on, and slid toward the shoulder as far as I dared. The storm had drifted a lip onto the right side, and I didn't want to bury my drives. I set the brake, put it in neutral, and felt that little exhale rigs do when they're allowed to stop. The lights pulled up behind me and settled, throwing my trailer's shadow long and weird across the white. I grabbed my license, medical card, and bill of lading and cracked the driver's window an inch. Snowflakes came in sideways and sizzled on the dashboard. Instinct said, "Thank God, a human." Another instinct, the one you don't listen to because it likes to be dramatic, said, "Why is he alone out here?" He came up on my left like a ghost from a snow globe, dark parka, trooper hat, high-vis under the coat, flashing like a fish belly in the lights. He tapped his knuckles on the door near the handle. I took in the details, the way you do when your life has taught you to pay attention. His patch looked right, Montana Highway Patrol, the shape, the bison, the blue. But the thread at the lower edge had a shine store-bought patches have. Too clean. Like a Halloween costume that never met rain. He didn't tilt his shoulder to let me read a nameplate. The badge rode the parka in a way that said clip-on, not pinned through. He leaned close enough that I could smell cold nylon. "Evening, driver," he said. His voice had the right music, that Plains cop drawl that never overreacts. "Roads closing east of Jordan. I need you to step out. Quick safety look, and relocation." "Relocation?" I said. "To where?" He thumbed back toward the wash of red and blue. "We're staging in a turnout by the county shop. You'll follow me. I'm not a man who argues on reflex, and I was glad to see any plan that wasn't die in a ditch. Still, something went crooked in my head and refused to straighten. I checked my cell, no bars. That's not rare out there, but the way the CB suddenly went dead, carrier light pinned, no audio, made my scalp prickle. A plow had been chirping 15 minutes before about a drift near sun-kissed coulee. Now the channel sounded like cotton. "Let's do it," I said to buy time and watch him. "You want my paperwork?" "After," he said. An odd order. Any real trooper with a rig stopped will touch the paper like rosary before anything else. He didn't even look. "Out of the cab, please. We'll check chains, then you can follow me with the lights on." I kept the window where it was. "Sergeant's name tonight?" I said, casual, like a man trying to keep his brain warm with conversation. He blinked snow off his lashes. "Sergeant Walker," he said with confidence that came too fast. Maybe there was a Sergeant Walker, maybe there wasn't. The speed of the answer bothered me more than the content. "What's the mile marker on the closure?" I asked. He angled his head, and for a beat too long he didn't answer. Then, 296. 296 is west of me, I said. We're at 302. He didn't look back into the storm to check his lie. He put his palm on my door. "Out, now." The hand. That's what changed it from maybe fine to no. Real cops don't brace your door like it's theirs. They stand a half step off, leave room for you to be a person. His hand was gloved, dark, with a seam split at the thumb letting pale skin show. There was a scar, thin and ropey, running from the web of his thumb down onto his wrist. Details get you killed and details save you. You never know which until later. "Give me 1 second to throw my jacket on," I said, still buying time. I slid the window up 2 inches while I reached back. He kept his hand on the door. The mirror showed his vehicle behind me through the snow. White SUV, square, the kind all agencies buy, nose low under drift. The light bar on top looked legit. What I didn't hear was radio chatter, the background hum of dispatch and units chewing on the night. The LEDs on his bar pulsed without that faint high-pitched whine some units leak. He might have had a better rig, or he might have had a cheap one. My phone still showed 0. The CB meter sat crushed to the right. A jammer can do that if you've got the gear and the nerve. Who brings a jammer to a blizzard? A man who wants privacy where nobody can give it to him. Driver, he said, colder now. Door. Now. I told my body to relax and smiled, the polite country kind. Yes, sir. Can I have your badge number through the glass before I step out? Protocol. I lied, as if I had ever had such a protocol in my whole life. His eyes did a small thing, tightened at the edges, not enough for a camera, plenty for me. You want a citation for non-compliance? What I want, I said, is to not slip on your ice and make paperwork for both of us. Badge number, and I'm yours. He lifted the badge toward the glass. The window fog from my breath made it smear. I wiped a circle with my sleeve. The badge read, Montana Highway Patrol. Under the crest, where you expect the number stamped or engraved, there was a blank smoothness, like a face without a mouth. He realized I saw it. We looked at each other through a cold inch of glass and drifting snow, and we both understood the conversation had ended. He stepped back, not like a cop giving space, but like a man making room to move. His right hand dipped inside the parka toward his belt, or the inside pocket, a motion that could mean radio or weapon or something with a mouth. I didn't wait to translate. I dropped the air horn with my left palm and stabbed the starter with my right. The rig caught with a shudder. I dumped the brake, felt the chains bite, and eased the clutch like I was walking a sleeping baby down a creaky stair. The truck crept. He lunged for the handle. I moved the wheel a whisper, right so his glove hit the mirror instead of my latch. The mirror bucked and held. He went for the SUV. In the red-blue wash, I watched him drag open the back and pull something black and stick-thin. Telescoping baton with a loop at the end. If you've never seen an animal control catch pole used on a person, keep it that way. I'd seen one in town once on a drunk who bit a paramedic. The loop lands, tightens, and the leverage belongs to the man who holds the stick. I kept the rig inching. The drift at the shoulder stood like a white wall 2 feet high. If I climbed it wrong, I'd sit down on my axles and be theater for whatever he wanted. If I stayed in the lane, he'd have my door again in 2 steps. So, I did the thing I didn't want to do. I cut left, across the center line into the oncoming lane I couldn't see, trusting there was nobody because no one sane drives toward a ghost in a blizzard. The trailer wagged. Chains bit. The truck slid half a lane and then caught. The feeling you only get in snow, when physics gives you 1 extra grip and you promise God you'll be nicer about everything if you can have just 1 more. He ran up my driver's side, the pole extended, the loop open, angling for my window. I shoved my elbow against the glass as if bone could beat steel. He jabbed and the loop smacked the frame and bounced, the wire ringing a note that still lives in my teeth. I rolled another 6 feet, then another. He had to choose, run with me or go to his vehicle and play a bigger game. He chose the SUV. He tore the back door wider, threw the pole in, and jumped to the driver's seat. That's when 2 plow rigs came out of the white like ships with their own daylight, yellow strobes, big blades, V-plows throwing walls of powder 30 feet either side. They weren't fast, but they were mass and purpose. My horn had done one thing right. It had announced a mess to the only kings that matter in a winter night. I dropped my window 2 inches, stupid maybe, and waved both arms like I was trying to land a plane on my hood. The lead plow braked, blade up, and angled to give me a pocket. The second eased across to block the SUV's line if it tried to come around. You haven't lived until you've felt what help feels like in a storm. It has weight. The SUV's light bar cut. The white box backed into the snow line, nosed a 3-point like a man who had practiced leaving. The plow's driver, gray beard, ball cap, the state symbol on his parka, leaned on his air and pinned the world open with sound. The SUV went dark, then ghost, then gone. Swallowed by a ranch approach I hadn't seen. The plowman climbed his ladder and stomped to my step, hand on the rail. He didn't ask for paperwork. He removed the question from the air like it was a snake. "You all right?" he shouted through the snow. "Not sure," I shouted back, and then laughed in a way that sounded too much like crying. "Fake trooper." "Yeah," he said, not surprised. "Get yourself to the shop. It's warm, and it's lit." He pointed with his whole arm. "We radioed highway patrol when we saw the lights wrong. They're coming." At the county shop, a big cinder block barn with heaters that sounded like distant trains, I backed against a concrete stop and set the brake with hands that wanted to be anywhere else. The plow guys brought me a styrofoam cup of coffee that tasted like help. The shop cat, a battered gray thing with half a left ear, rubbed its spine against my boot until it remembered it was a cat and pretended it didn't care. Highway patrol rolled in 20 minutes later, 2 units, real badges that bit the cloth, radio static talking to itself on their shoulders, the tired competence of people who have spent more nights than I have in the weather. They took my story twice, which is how you make sure details settle into truth instead of panic. I told them about the blank badge, the clip, the scar on the hand, the catch pole with the loop, the CB going to carrier, and my phone dying at once. They nodded in the way people nod when a thing they have suspected just shook their sleeve. One of the plow guys said he'd seen a white Explorer tailing trucks on the 200 2 weeks earlier, hanging back when he came by with the blade. Another mentioned an unmarked light bar on a farm truck near Circle that didn't look like county issue. The troopers traded looks that said this wasn't a movie, it was a week. We drove the short way back to where I'd been pulled. The wind had repainted the road, but the SUV's tracks cut into a field approach, running along a shelter belt before turning down a section line that didn't exist on my map. The trooper took photos. Another unit went to knock the nearest ranch house awake. Those conversations are gentle at first and then get less so. I didn't sleep during the morning break. I sat in the shop's office with my fingers tight around warmth and watched the door as if it could be patient with me. A trooper came back just before dawn with an update I didn't ask for, but needed. "Impersonator," he said plainly. "We've had 3 calls from Jordan to Ritchie this month. Stops, no citations. Drivers released after odd questions. We didn't have details until you. We do now." "What happens to a man like that out here?" I asked. "If we find him tonight," the trooper said, "he gets cold and bracelets. If we don't, he tries again. We've got descriptions out. County's awake." He looked at my hands. "You did right." "I drove," I said, feeling foolish and lucky. "You didn't open," he said. "That's the part." I made my drop a day late after the road reopened. The world kept being the world, which is both a mercy and an insult. When I got home, I told my wife more of it than I normally would, because if a thing is going to take up space in a house, it ought to pay rent by not being a secret. She listened the way you hope someone you love will listen when you tell them the night reached into you and left a fingerprint. I changed things. Some drivers change their routes after a scare. I changed my rules. I still stop for real law. That doesn't make you smart, that makes you a citizen. But I now have a checklist on a laminated card above my visor that I read out loud, even when I'm alone, because doing it out loud makes cowardice feel like procedure. CB alive. If carrier is pinned with no voices, assume jammer. Phone bars? If 0 at the moment of contact, treat as suspicious. Ask for badge number and call sign through glass. Nameplate and badge pinned through cloth, not clipped to parka. Radio chatter audible on the officer's shoulder. If asked to exit immediately before paperwork, decline and request relocation to a lit area. If flashers in a whiteout with no other units around, ask for secondary. If anything wobbles, roll to the nearest plow yard, C-store, or ranch light and call 911. I called my dispatcher and told him what I wanted in the company book. He said, "Put it in an email." I did, and 2 weeks later there was a winter contact protocol in every truck with our sticker on it. A vet in Wyoming wrote to say he'd thought I was being dramatic, and then a trooper asked him to step out on a bare stretch near Rawlins, and he refused and the lights went away. He said thanks, like it hurt. I told him he didn't owe me a thing. People like to talk about fear like it's a thing you conquer. I don't believe that. I think fear is a tool you learn to ride. That night taught me the uniform I trusted could be worn by a man who sees truckers as solitude on wheels. It also taught me the 2 plows in the teeth of a storm will make a pocket for you if you raise your hand and ask. Both truths live in my head now, side by side. When red and blue find me in snow, I still slow. I just keep the glass between us until the details prove themselves. If you run nights, remember this. Out there, symbols are shortcuts, not proof. The badge, the bar, the sign. Good men wear them, and bad men buy them. The thing that keeps you alive is time and light and the small questions you ask, like a farmer testing a fence with a gloved hand. And if you ever hear a driver on 19, voice leaning too high, saying his radio went quiet and a cop wants him out in a whiteout, do what those plow drivers did for me. Be mass and purpose. Show up, throw light, make a pocket in the storm where a man can stand up and get his name back. If you've made it this far, you're tougher than most. Drop a quick comment letting me know where you're watching from. It helps me know where the dark hours reach. And if you're enjoying the ride, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next story.